Mr. B. Srinivas, Secretary DARPG, Department of Administrative Reforms and Public Grievances. Sir, please take your seat on the dais. We have Dr. Nageshwaran, the Chief Economic Advisor. Mr. Shombi Shah, Resident Coordinator, United Nations. Dr. Shekhar Bonu, Niti Aayog, Director General of DMU, Development Monitoring and Evaluation Office. Dr. Sonamdev Desai, a distinguished university professor at the University of Maryland. Dr. Mudit Kapoor, ISI Delhi. We are virtually being joined by Shri Nagendra Nath Sinha, Secretary, Ministry of Rural Development, and Mr. Neeraj Mittal, Department of IT, Government of Tamil Nadu. Sir, over to you.
Thank you very much, Anna. Thank you, CEO. Obviously, I am the grateful beneficiary of work done by my predecessors, my CEO, by Hannah and her team, to preside at the launch without having done any of the work. Let me though say that the issue is one that I have some experience with and am deeply convinced of the importance of. I first came to India to be the Director General of NCAR in 2001, and I was there for about a decade. And indeed, one of my fellow panelists, Dr. Sonal Desai, was there at that time and is still there. And as many of you may know, that one of the hallmarks of NCR has been its concern for an ability to collect household data. I also then had the experience of being a part-time member of the Statistical Commission about a decade later. So the point that was made in the slide presentation that India has considerable sort of expertise and rich history in data is absolutely true. But it is also the case that the struggle for transparency, including the National Sample Survey, it's been a long journey. And so this is in some ways the culmination in trying to make data more broadly accessible. And of course, this is a global trend. The IMF, the World Bank, our World in Data, everybody has been committed to using the technology that makes data more widely available. I haven't had an opportunity to understand the access to metadata in this data set. I think that's quite important because what I would expect and hope is that journalists, of whom I'm sure there are some in the crowd, would immediately rush to this resource, but they can use the data, the resource responsibly only if the metadata supports the numbers there. Otherwise, it's liable to be misinterpreted. But data in a democracy is a very, very important part of accountability. And the fact that these data are now available down to the district level, possibly even the panchayat level, because I understood that there were local government descriptors, is a very important mechanism for citizens to, as it were, be watchdogs over their public servants. So for all these reasons, I totally agree that this is a remarkable day. But you're here to hear the panelists and not me. And the discussion that I'm privileged to chair is on the topic of interoperability, leveraging the power of data sets, systems, and agencies working together. I've been informed that Shri Neeraj Mittal, who is joining us virtually, cannot remain for the whole panel discussion. Let me bring him first.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
We are running ahead of schedule.
Oh.
So he will be joining joining at 3:50, sir.
Oh, I see. Okay, so then we can, is there somebody else online, or should we start with others?
There are 3 rural development is online.
I see. Okay, then I'll have to skip around with this. Mr. Sinha, are you able to hear me? Secretary, are you able to hear me?
Sir, I am able to hear you first.
Okay. Well, do you mind if we jump the gun and get started with you immediately?
Not a problem, sir.
Okay. Sir, you are responsible for the design and implementation of policies that address the development needs of rural areas. In February, your ministry released the Rural Connectivity GIS data set. This data can be easily merged with other geolocated data sets available to users. Any examples you'd like to share with this distinguished audience on the use of this data set by businesses and civil society? And what steps are you looking to take to make your ministry's data even more open and easy to use? And since we may have a bit more time, what were the drivers of your ministry's investment in data and in making data widely available? You have 8 to 10 minutes for your response, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. So the ministry has always been keeping its data set and to the public. If you want to see any of our programs, the data is entirely available on the web, and anyone can download. If you encounter any difficulty in this regard, the ministry always assists the users for
May I request you to come slightly closer to your mic, if you don't mind?
Okay. For a moment, rather. We had one implementation of Mahatma Gandhi Narega, so that addresses the issue of employment guarantee. We have data on the related to the rural housing, and we have data on the related to rural livelihoods and many others besides the rural connectivity. One of the key issues that this ministry has always thought of and believed in is that allowing access of data to the members of the public allows them to analyze and talk themselves, which also benefits us by having a fair amount of discussion and giving us their feedback on the issues. Talking specifically, I would like to mention about the issue of the rural connectivity data set that we need. It's very important for us to do planning for the rural connectivity so that only the appropriate data are used to select the right kind of load. And you would be aware that the total rural length in the country is about 4.2 million kilometers, out of which the ministry has funded about over 7 lakh kilometers. Now, to select about 1.25 lakh kilometers of that for consolidation and improvement is a difficult task. So, what we did is to collect data for the rural market. We did collect data for the secondary level education institutions, health institutions, and we developed algorithms to kind of simulate the traffic activity. We have a very rich data set on which to base our planning. And we thought if the data remains to ourselves, it's not of much use to the committee because a lot of effort, in fact, Hindi 5 years ago, has gone into developing this data set at a huge expense of time as well as the resources. So therefore, we were motivated to release it to the members of Some of these thoughts also behind the people in the urban areas have the Google Maps and they can access any part of the city without much effort. And related thought was that if you could also provide the same kind of facility to off-person tracking to the rural areas without the need for traversing and meandering, so those people can also connect. So the idea was that we have the data set, those who have the necessary map software, they could plug this data and provide the service. So we will be very glad Map India and three other people, organizations are taking data from many more in pipeline. We have similar dashboard for the PMNYG, we have dashboard for the JNRA1, and I also mentioned about the rural employment and NREGS, social audit, etc. that we have. I would like to take this occasion to develop or to mention two other things that we are doing. One is a data set called Socioeconomic Art Center. So that was organized by the Ministry of Social Development. Component one as well as user. Task issue, task part of it was somewhat controversial, so we can out of it. But the Socioeconomic Art Center data of the rural area is available, and the ministry, etc., are using it for planning their own. Now we are in the process of taking a decision of using the raw data of that used by the public for doing various kinds of. We have another set of very good piece of data of Niti and data, and this data is of the facilities and services being provided at various levels. The last count we are collecting data on 143 pieces of items of services and facilities. So this data is also available for 3 years. So we are doing some kind of consistency check on that, and we will also be going to be releasing those. Sir, I also want to take this opportunity for informing the audience. We are in the process of this devising a data sharing policy for the department under the national, in line with the national data sharing and accessibility policy, and this will help in maximizing use of the data for the benefit of community, national planning, development, awareness, and maximizing integration and data. We have also formed a data insight unit which helps us analyze, do various kind of analysis to clean and find the what could convergence of different data sets and provide insights to us. Sharing the data with the open data portal, I mentioned earlier, we have a single window mobile application called Ramsarpad, which acts as a platform for all the data and assets in a grant project from RD schemes. We are also in the process of taking a decision on the release of tables and data sets vis-a-vis the release of data as part of the Excel tables and ESG data set. So this would facilitate access to an analysis of the data, and would also be releasing the image data sets that we have. We have also developed watershed development plans for the Gram Panchayat. So these plans have been overlaid on the National Remote Sensing Centers data set, which is called geospatial database, where all the work that can be taken to develop the watershed on that particular area are identified, and all the ministries and voluntary organizations, civil society organizations can find out useful words from that and implement that. So all in all, I want to mention from the Ministry of Rural Development side that first of all, the ministry commends the Niti Aayog for developing the Ndap concept, and we will be working with the Niti for fulfilling the mandate that has led before the different ministries, including ours, to the releasing various data sets to the members of public and as well as on the different platforms, including open data for better use and analysis of the data, of quality and finding out trends and other research questions. So
that's very impressive, sir. Thank you so much. I do hope you will stay for the rest of the discussion, and there may well be points that you've raised that others will want to respond to. But I don't know, is the...
He's not right.
Okay, fine. Well then, with your permission, sir, I'll now move to the other panelists who are here in presence, and let me turn to a fellow economist, Dr. Nageshwaran, who has deep experience of working in academia, in the private sector, and now, of course, in government. A couple of questions for you, Ananta. With increased digitization and development of the fintech landscape, the traditional ways of data handling are expected to be replaced by new age methods. In many ways, this resonates with Ndap, which is also in large part about interoperability of data sets. Could you compare Ndap with data sets that, like Bloomberg, etc., that are common in the private sector? And as part and parcel of that, which you've seen that in its most evolved form, now that you are a consumer of the data produced by your own government, you as yet have a sense of where you would like this exercise to progress.
Thank you, Dr. Berry, and good afternoon to everybody. I would first of all like to congratulate Niti Aayog for this excellent initiative, because about a month ago or so, when Anna came to present this to the Economics Division at the Ministry of Finance, we were very excited. In fact, if I was 4 decades younger, I would have got up and danced. And because that was the excitement we felt about this initiative, I would not call it Ndap. It is actually a beginning, because Ndap sounds like End app. So it's actually it's a beginning. And then, if you look at the byline, sort of, or the subtitle, strengthening the last mile delivery of government data, this is what it says here. I would actually say it is actually in the process energizing the first kilometer of data generation as well. So regardless of whether we are in the world of fintech and algorithm and machine learning, what we need is timely generation of reliable data that enables evidence and information-based policy making. Now, you might say that Ndap starts at the other end of this exercise, this goal, which I just now mentioned, about data generation. It is about presentation. However, sometimes what happens is certain initiatives will trigger unexpected, positive, desirable consequences and outcomes. And this particular initiative has the potential of actually galvanizing and energizing data generation itself. How? Because I think it will indeed, and this is my hope, probably I am expressing it as a forecast, that it will mark a cultural shift in the Government of India and other government departments, and even state governments' approach to data generation and dissemination. The interoperability will enable users and the data generators to look at how you can synergize and interlink multiple sources of data to see the policy as well as procedural linkages. In a way, I see this as the equivalent of the Gati Shakti dashboard in terms of connecting multiple departments and ministries, and not only in the process you will see the connections between all these sources of data, but you will also see the gaps that exist. You may have 4 pieces of data, but the 5th one could be missing. But to see that there are 4 pieces of data available, this interoperability will actually play a very big part. I think when Anna came to us and in the economics division made a presentation about Ndap, one of the things we said was, we said, look at the FRED database at the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. I mean, of course, we are coming from the macroeconomics framework, but this goes into granular development data as well. And that is why we encourage her to add RBI data and many other generators of macroeconomic data in the country into the Ndap database. And one of the things we said was, Fred. And one of the things we said was, FRED database allows users to manipulate and generate different combinations, converting them into indices, converting the series into percentage changes, etc. And therefore, this entire user interface and manipulation that is available in Ndap is a very important feature. So, my expectation is that this will enable us eventually, and I see this as a beginning, that's why I said I see it as a beginning. This will enable us to identify the macroeconomic data gaps that exist. For example, we all know very well that I think while the periodic labor force survey is indeed improving, in the sense that the gap is now a five-month gap between the current month where we are and the last available data set is for October to December. But we will be able to see, I think, eventually more timely generation of data, identify the gaps on many aspects, whether it is on capital formation in the country, for which we don't have very good, reliable, timely data, or as I mentioned earlier, employment generation. In all these aspects, it is my fervent hope that this initiative actually triggers much needed action. And I think in a way it will also boost the transparency that we need with our data. I mean, with respect to what kind of story that the macro data and the granular data is telling us with respect to our development and economic progress. It doesn't matter if it reveals several positive stories and few improvement areas, and that is par for the course. And that is what will improve, it will sort of give us the avenues for prioritization, avenues for dedicating resources to those aspects which need extra resources, etc. So I think sometimes we will ourselves be surprised by the kind of positive spin-off that a simple data presentation, visualization, and aggregation initiative such as this could lead to. And therefore, that is my biggest excitement with this initiative. It is not about the interoperability, it is not about the machine readability or machine compatibility aspects of this initiative, but about the unexplored possibilities that this initiative has. Therefore, I can't thank CEO Mr. Amitabh Kant and all the other executives in Niti Aayog, my friend Shekhar Bonu on the panel here, and Anna and many others behind this initiative. I think it is going to be nothing short of revolutionary. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. Many of us have looked to the economic survey as being the oracle in print, and so perhaps we're going to give you a bit of competition now.
No, you are you're actually going to contribute to making the survey a better one with this data.
Okay, good. Next, let me turn to Mr. Shoppy Sharp, the UN Resident Coordinator in India, and as the US Resident Coordinator, he's the direct representative of the Secretary General and the highest ranking UN official based in the country, equivalent to ambassadorial rank. Mr. Sharp, you've served in various capacities all over the world: South Africa, Southern Africa, New York, of course, Eastern Europe, Central Asia, Middle East, the South Caucasus, now in India. How do you see the role of data as a catalyst or indeed a barrier to development? And with, as it were, the global support which only the UN can assemble behind the SDGs, what contribution do you think more accessible data can make in progress towards the SDGs?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Vice Chairman and CEO and all of the distinguished colleagues here on the panel. Greetings to the practitioners, economists, governments, partners, and researchers in the audience. Muche Vigyan Bahwan Me Akar Bahat Koshikri. It's a great honor to be here on behalf of the United Nations country in India. I think, this is a fascinating discussion for so many reasons. I mean, to your question, obviously, data and evidence has become the DNA for development policy making and implementation at all levels. So whether you're talking about government services, national, local, whether you're talking about international development partnerships, and of course certainly in the private sector as well. And this is not new. I could invoke the words of the 19th century super sleuth Sherlock Holmes, who said it's a capital mistake to make conclusions without data. But on the other hand, sticking with this crime sort of, genre, the British economist Ronald Coase said that if you torture the data, it will confess to anything. So we have to sort of keep these two in mind, especially these days, because in this world of fourth industrial revolution, of big data, Internet of Things, and such, the lines are being blurred between physical, digital, biological spheres, and the importance of having reliable, credible, accessible data for all of society becomes incredibly important. So it's not just for the decision makers in governments. It's important for the business sector, for private sector. It's important for citizens. It's important for all of society, researchers, as we've seen here today. And I wanted to also congratulate those who have won the awards. I think that, if I would have had access to such a tool as you've launched today, back when I was doing research, which was many years ago, the hair was still dark then, this could have been incredible, because you can really look across all. I was doing macroeconomic modeling of the potential impacts of a different pandemic, the HIV one, at that point in time. But so, we are, of course, the SDGs, as you mentioned. I mean, this is our global roadmap. When I say our, I don't mean the UN, I mean India, I mean the member states, because we are you. This is the global roadmap, and SDGs are themselves, KPIs. That's fundamentally what they are, and they're really doing, two things. One is helping to articulate the vision where you want to go, and I think this is, another very important aspect of the tool that you're launching. And the other is to then monitor and track progress to the outcomes. Are you delivering on that vision? Now, the questions interoperability that have come up, and this is also very, very important. In fact, right after the SDGs were launched, pretty soon thereafter, they realized that we needed to have coming together on that. So the UN World Data Forum in 2017, 2 years after, launched a collaborative on SDG data interoperability, which has kind of been looking at a lot of the methodology that your Ndap system has focused on. And I think Ndap, now that I'm looking at it more closely, I think could be brought to that forum and shared as a very good practice in that regard. So I think, really, there's a lot more to say, absolutely. But what you are doing here is you are hitting on so many of the most important buttons, which is in this world of data and digitalized data, which is you're democratizing the access to data, you're making it available, again, to everybody from citizens at the panchayat level, household level, and up. You're doing so in a trusted way, because we are, data and trust, this is one of the biggest sort of fissures, let's say, within societies across the world at the moment. And this is a key tool for its good governance, because it's accountability and it's fulfilling the sort of social contract, let's say, with the citizens in terms of access to data and periodicity and different aspects like that. So probably I'll stop there, but just to say that my experience in those different countries I've served in, this really is a cutting-edge tool, and this really does cement, is very much in line with India's leadership role within the tech sphere, within the data sphere. India is its story is legendary, let's say, for the statistical machinery for many decades, for hundreds of years, and I think this is a way to really show how India is progressing now into the fourth industrial age.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We now go. Okay. Mr. Mittal?
Can you hear it?
Yes, can you hear us?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, well, let me introduce you briefly and then ask you to contribute. It's kind of you to join us. I know you had other obligations. Mr. Neeraj Mittal is Principal Secretary, Government of Tamil Nadu. And of course, you have extensive experience in policy formulation, in e-governance, transport, industrial promotion, petroleum and natural gas. And your government, the Tamil Nadu government, is a leader in the use of data analytics and digital methods. How do you see Ndap as an enabler for data-driven policy making? And how, as one of the leading states, have you found use of data affecting policy formulation, or indeed transforming policy formulation? What insights have real-time or widely available data made to policy process in your state, which is widely considered one of the leading states? Over to you, sir, for about 6 or 7 minutes.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me over. I know, thanks all the panelists who are to this really great session. Tamil Nadu really has been a pioneering state to use data. Our Honorable Chief Minister has recently given us the target of making the governance based on data. We issued a government order recently. Typically, governments work in silos, and the departments who create their own data, they're non-standardized in nature. They come across in different silos. They're not able to look at each other. Following when it took over, they passed a government order saying that all the data has to be shared with a centralized data fiduciary. I think that's a very a policy step, possibly applicable to a lot of countries where this kind of legacy databases exist, and I think this is something which other states can benefit from. The second thing we did was to establish data reference standards, which means all e-governance applications have to follow that standard, so that these systems do not come independently as islands and unable to talk to each other. We have seen rich dividends from that. We followed it up with the Tamil Nadu data policy, which essentially lays down the principles for what will be open data, what will be the principles of shape it with third-party providers, value-added services, how do we price data if we have to, how will this data be collated, standardized, shared, what will be the security considerations which will happen, how do you anonymize data for sharing it with third-party outside resources, and that has actually started this process of use of data for policy making. We launched a data purity project which has led to rich dividends in creation of fiscal space by reducing inclusion errors and exclusion errors on both sides. We are having a very large state family database project in which we are federating at least 8 to 9 databases of different departments together and trying to create one database which will be a single source of truth for all schemes across the state. As a next step, we would like the citizens, the government to be running behind the citizens and not the other way around, which is today, where citizens have to run behind government for services. So, in a nutshell, have citizens, as soon as they attain eligibility of any scheme, either based on a trigger of achieving 18 years or 21 years, to immediately get these services in their inboxes, if I were to say that. The Ndap is a really development in the series of these changes which are happening rapidly in Tamil Nadu, and we really welcome this. I think the importance of Ndap is of using the use case as a premise, as a starting point. Unless the data is available for any use, I think it is just will lay there without having been utilized for any meaningful purpose. Once it is a use case, others can start using it. We can start making comparisons across states and learn from each other. The enforcement of quality of data through a star rating, I think that's an excellent feature. We're trying to emulate that in our future endeavors for the departments. Previous speakers spoke about democratizing of data. I think this will be a great step in democratizing the use of data across states. And these data sets which are growing rapidly, I think there are already 50 up there, possibly more are going to be launched very soon, will help us, all the states, to see how, issues like, for example, you said about possible use cases. So we could think of urban growth rate, land use growth rate, and it could be one of the, area of analysis which we could do. We could look at, for example, demand, supply, consumption of water and energy, proximity to urban and rural populations, across states. How does it vary across states once you use the feature of having the common geographical denominator in every data set. And many of these examples we are actively thinking about. I think this Ndap platform will help us and all these states just to come up together very rapidly. Data is a new oil, and if we use it properly, I think our policies will be very, very proactively helpful to the citizens and create efficiency and provide more money to be used without having inclusion and exclusion errors. So with that, I will hand over back to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mittal. You've been very economical with your time, so I can't resist asking one question, because clearly this is fairly central to the working of your government at the state level. What machinery have you put in place to ensure the quality of administrative data? When I was a member of the Statistical Commission, this was an issue we wrestled with. What is the capability, statistical capability in administrative departments? That was a decade ago. So since then, has technology helped you identify outliers, to identify, to clean the data? Whose responsibility is it?
Okay, so a very, very relevant question. It's easy to form policies, but how to execute it is the biggest challenge which you just outlined, and the capacity both at the individual department. So one of the things which we have, envisaged in our policy is to create data officers in every department. Now, so we identify a set of, a couple of people who will be actually responsible for this work of identifying what data set can be an open data set, what is restricted. We have a full-fledged governance structure of, headed by the chief secretary, wherein issues like if a department, if somebody is wanting a set of data and we cannot share it, and the local data officer says it cannot be shared, it will go right up to that committee for a decision, which will be assisted by, there is a center of excellence in Tamil Nadu E-Governance Agency, where we are having the centralized capacity to process data to help identify and advise departments what are the problems in the data collection. So, for example, the first name, last name, middle name, in a particular order, but the others may not be using it. Some are, using Tamil, Unicode compliant fonts. The others may not be using it. Some are using data collection, and so the metadata catalog is something we will have to provide, and we are, as part of the policy, we are going to create that. Training of these data officers is something we will have to proactively do over the next year and a half to create this capacity. But yes, you have hit the, on the nail, we need to do this efficiently if you want to go far.
Thank you so much for that very illuminating response. Following you, I'll turn now to the other civil servant on the panel, Mr. Srinivas, Secretary of the Department of Administrative Reform and Public Grievances. So you are in the hot seat, and in the sense that I'm sure that the people who come to you, for them, data is a matter of